Hello, friends. Welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. We're again with Bhante Sanathavihari, who will be leading a Sutta study this morning. He will be reading from Majjhima Nikaya 129. I will shortly type in the link. Welcome to Geeta, Michael, Nancy. Good to see you. And welcome to everyone that hasn't checked in yet. And I'll pass it on without further ado to Bhante Sanathavihari. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to start off with a little formal chanting. Samanta Chakevalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Sadamam Munirajase Sunantu Sakemokedam Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Badanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Badanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Badanta Namo Tase Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhase Namo Tase Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhase Namo Tase Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhase. So I'd like to start off by paying my respects to the most senior Bhante, Bhante Sumita, and also to the other monastics here at Empty Cloud. And I'd also like to welcome all of you online and here in person for Sutta study here today. So today I'm going to be covering the Balapanditta Sutta, the foolish and the wise. And I'm going to be very honest. I like the sutta. I like all these suttas that talk about hell and all the torturing, because I feel like, as a Christian convert to Buddhism in the beginning, one of the reasons you get away from like Christianity or Catholicism is because like, oh, hell, the devil, like, oh, you have this aversion to it. But you got to deal with it when you come to Buddhism. Like, you can't run away from it. We try to, do all kinds of gymnastics to please ourselves and find only the things that we like in the Dhamma. But hell is there. The punishments are there. All of that's there. And we have to be aware of it. And we just can't only read like nice, wishful, sweet Dhammapada verses all the time. We got to face the reality that there is a hell. There are consequences for actions. And there are dumb people and smart people in the world. And that's just the way things are. So doesn't sound nice, but it's the truth. So before we start this sutta, there's a particular gatha from the Mahamangala Sutta that I really think really captures the whole sutta within just these two lines. But I'm going to talk for an hour anyways. So it goes, Asevana che bala nam pandita nancha sevana. Right? So not to associate or fraternize with fools, but instead to associate or fraternize with the wise or the smart. So I think this really captures the essence of, about the how we live our lives, who we should hang out with and who we should associate with. If we hang out with foolish people, then we'll become fools. If we hang out with wise people, then we'll become wiser. And even though you might say, well, I'm a nice person, it doesn't matter if I hang out with foolish people, we have to be careful because my mom would say, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. She would say it in Spanish all the time to me, reminding me that was like her subtle hint, like she didn't want me to go out with those people and play with them, with those kids. And also I like telling my kids in my Dhamma school, I'm like, imagine you have a nice clean white shirt and then you throw it in like the dirty hamper. Like the shirt might be clean, but it's going to get the smell of all the dirty stuff, you know? So you might be pure, but if you associate enough with foolish people, you're going to get that stench, or people are going to associate you with foolish people. So now I want to get into the sutta itself. So I'm going to be using the same link from Sutta Central, so you can follow along at home. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi and Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Bhante, they replied. The Buddha said this: these are the three characteristic signs, manifestations of a fool. What three? A fool thinks poorly, speaks poorly, and acts poorly. So we have to remember there are three types of kamma: mental, verbal, and physical. Sometimes we like to give ourselves a pass with the mental one and be, oh, I'm just thinking bad things. It's not bad. I'm not acting them out. But you're a foolish person if you think that. If a fool didn't think poorly, speak poorly, and act poorly, then how would that astute person or smart, wise person know of them? This fellow is a fool, a bad person. But since a fool does think poorly, speaks poorly, and acts poorly, then the wise do know of them. This fellow is a fool, a bad person. A fool experiences three kinds of sufferings and sadness in the present life. Suppose a fool is sitting in a council hall, a street, a crossroad where people are discussing what is proper and fitting. And suppose that fool is someone who kills living creatures, steals, commits sexual misconduct, lies, and uses alcoholic drinks that cause negligence. Then that fool thinks these people are discussing what is proper and fitting, but those things are found in me, and I am seen in them. This is the first kind of suffering and sadness that a fool experiences in the present life. So, yeah, you might be hanging out with your friends or with some other people, and they start talking about, what are bad people. And then they say, well, someone who kills, who steals, and does all these things, and you find yourself that you have these qualities. So when you hear that, you're like, you kind of get that feeling like, oh, they're talking about me, And that's the first kind of suffering you feel. You feel that anxiety, that worry that you're going to get found out, right? You're going to be exposed. The next one is, further, a fool sees that the kings have arrested a bandit, a criminal, and subjected them to various punishments: whipping, caning, and clubbing, cutting off of hands and feet, or both, cutting off ears or nose, or both, the porridge pot, the shell shave, the demon's mouth, the garland of fire, the burning hands, the grass blades, the bark dress, the antelope, the meat hook, the coins, the caustic pickles, the twisting bar, the straw mat, being splashed with hot oil, being fed to the dogs, being impaled alive, and being beheaded. Then that fool thinks, the kinds of deeds for which the king inflicts such punishment, those things are found in me, and I am seen in them. If the king finds out about me, they will inflict the same kind of punishments on me. This is the second kind of suffering and sadness that a fool experiences in the present life. So, fortunately, this doesn't really happen where we live. Maybe in certain parts of the world, people still get punished this way, but we don't get this kind of punishment. But I've known friends who, been doing some illegal things, and we might just be walking down the street or driving, and as soon as they get a view of a police car, they just tighten up. They get all paranoid, right? Why is that? Because they know they've done something wrong. They know they did something foolish, and they know that they can get sent to jail, and they'll be locked up, for a couple months, many years, and they'll lose all their freedom. So it's this kind of sense of suffering that a person experiences. They can't be safe, right? As soon as they leave the house, or maybe they hear a noise at night and they think, oh, like they're going to raid my house. They're raiding my house. The cops are there. So these are the kind of suffering a fool experiences because of their bad deeds. Furthermore, when a fool is resting on a chair or a bed or on the ground, their past deeds, misconduct, body, speech, and mind settle down upon them, rest down upon them, and lay down upon them. That's like every time I sit in meditation. That's how I feel. Especially with the Catholic guilt, right? Like all those things. Like, oh, I remember when I was like, I think I was like 10 years old, and I said something bad to my mom, and I've never been able to let it go. She forgot about it, but and I ran away too that day. It was very bad. I'll tell you the story. So I don't know what got into me, but she said something to me, and I just had it. That was the last straw. and I said some bad word to her. I don't know what I said, and I felt so bad that I left. I was like, I can't be in the house anymore. I'm ashamed. So I like banished myself, and I went into the streets. The bad thing, it was like 7 o'clock at night. So I was like wandering the streets at night. I went to my friend's house and I stayed there for a bit, but he said, you can't stay here. Like his mom saw that I was there. So then I went walking across Hollywood to my auntie's house and I stayed there. And my mom called all her friends and my aunties, and they were like driving up and down the streets all night. They went to the police station, and yeah, it got pretty serious. Yeah. I was a fool then. And it still comes to mind, when I think about like, oh, my poor mom, like she didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve me telling her that. And then me like acting that way too. And I still feel bad about it. But she hasn't even brought it up ever. It's just like me beating myself up over it. So in a similar way, I haven't got to the rest of it, but when we sit down, it seems like all of our past bad deeds come to mind, right? Or like when you're trying to sleep in bed, but you're not sleeping, you're just laying there. Then like all this existential dread of all the bad things that happened in the past comes to you, right? That's why people put on music. They get on their phone. They leave Netflix on all night, or they drink alcohol, because they don't want to face the reality that they've done unwholesome actions in the past. It is like the shadow of a great mountain peak. In the evening, as it settles down, rests down, and lays down upon the earth. In the same way, when a fool is resting on a chair or a bed or on the ground, their past deeds, misconduct, body, speech, and mind settle down upon them, resting down upon them, and lay down upon them. Then that fool thinks, well, I haven't done good and skillful things that keep me safe, and I have done bad, violent, depraved things. When I depart, I'll go to the place where people who have done such things go. They sorrow and wail, lament, beating their breast, and falling into confusion. This is the third kind of suffering and sadness the fool experiences in the present life. So this is an unfortunate thing that I get to see quite often. As a Buddhist monk, we go to visit many people right before they die, in hospitals or at their houses, and a lot of regret. A lot of regret. And we know as Buddhists that, the last states of mind before you pass away are very important. They have a significant impact on your rebirth. So we try to remind them like, oh, remember like last year you came to the temple and you gave dana to the monks, and oh, remember you donated for this statue and you did all these good things, to try to get them over this sorrow and dread from their previous misdeeds or shortcomings that they had. Because they do worry. They worry about, devout Buddhist people do worry about their rebirth. They do worry that they might be born in hell or in the animal realm, or might have a bad human rebirth. It's a very something that many, not even Buddhists, like, in the West, Christian people worry about going to hell all the time, right? So this is a serious concern that people have. And when you notice that you've been doing a lot of foolish things, a lot of bad actions, it must be one of the worst torments you feel in your entire life when you're about to die and you have all your bad. So the monks taught me that we try to console the people and remind them of the good things so they can have at least a better rebirth. No one can escape their karma. They can't escape their bad actions, but even though they did bad things, we still wish them well. So that's why we try to remind them of the good things they did in this life. Having done bad things by way of body, speech, and mind, when their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. Right? So that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hell. You might just get a bad rebirth as a human, or in the animal realm, or as a preta, or one of the other hells. So there's different degrees of hells and torture we'll see coming up right here. And if there's anything of which it may be rightly said is that it's utterly unlikable, undesirable, and disagreeable. It is of hell that this should be said. So much so that it's not easy to give a simile for how painful hell is. When he said this, one of the mendicants asked the Buddha, "But sir, is it possible to give a simile?" "It is possible," said the Buddha. "Suppose they arrest a bandit, a criminal, present him to the king, saying, 'Your Majesty, this is a bandit, a criminal. Punish him as you will.' The king would say, 'Go, my men, and strike this man in the morning with 100 spears.' The king's men did as they were told. Then at midday, the king would say, 'My men, how is that man? He is still alive, Your Majesty.' The king would say, 'Go, my men, and strike this man in the midday with 100 spears.' The king's men did as they were told. Then late in the afternoon, the king would say, 'My men, how is that man? He's still alive, Your Majesty.' The king would say, 'Go, my men, and strike this man in the late afternoon with 100 spears.' The king's men did as they were told. What do you think, mendicants? Would that man experience pain, distress from being struck with 300 spears? Sir, that man would experience pain and distress from being struck with one spear, let alone 300 spears. Then the Buddha picked up a stone the size of his palm, addressed the mendicants. What do you think, mendicants? Which is bigger, the stone the size of my palm that I've picked up, or the Himalayas, the king of the mountains? Sir, the stone you picked up in this up is tiny compared to the Himalayas. It doesn't count. It's not worth a fraction. There's no comparison. In the same way, compared to the suffering in hell, the pain, distress experienced by that man due to being struck with 300 spears does not count. It's not worth a fraction. There is no comparison. The wardens of hell punish them with fivefold crucifixion. They drive red-hot stakes through the hands and feet, and another in the middle of the chest. And there they feel painful, sharp, severe, acute feelings, but they don't die until that bad deed is eliminated. The wardens of hell throw them down and hack them with axes. They hang them upside down and hang them with hatchets. They harness them to a chariot and drive them back and forth across burning ground, blazing and glowing. They make them climb up and down a huge mountain of burning coals, blazing and glowing. The wardens of hell turn them upside down and throw them into a red-hot copper pot, burning, blazing, and glowing. There they are seared in boiling scum, and they're swept up and down and round. And there they feel painful, sharp, severe, acute feelings, but they don't die until that bad deed is eliminated. The wardens of hell toss them into the great hell. Now about the great hell. There are four corners, four its doors, nearly divided in equal parts, surrounded by an iron wall. Of iron is its roof. The ground is even made of iron. It burns with fierce fire. The heat forever radiates 100 leagues around. I could tell you many different things about hell, so much that it's not easy to completely describe the suffering in hell. There are mendicants, animals that feed on grass. They eat by chopping grass or dried grass with their teeth. And what animals feed on grass? Elephants, horses, cattle, donkeys, goats, deers, and various others. A fool who used to be a glutton here and did bad deeds here, when the breakup of the body after death is reborn in the company of those sentient beings who feed on grass. So first we went through people who do unwholesome deeds in mind, speech, and body, and how the consequences might be that you're reborn in a hell. Now we're going to people who are like greedy, right? Gluttonous, who give in to sensual pleasures. And here's one of the consequences. You're reborn as a cow, a horse, a donkey, a goat. And the Buddha is going to give more examples of what happens to people who are gluttonous. They are animals that feed on dung. When they catch a whiff of dung, they run to it, thinking, there we'll eat, there we'll eat. It's like when Brahmins smell a burnt offering. They run to it thinking, there we'll eat, there we'll eat. The Buddha's like dissing them, right? Comparing them to like people who eat poop, the Brahmins. In the same way, there are animals that feed on dung. Right? Not similar, in the same way. When they catch a whiff of dung, they run to it, thinking, we'll eat, there we'll eat. And what animals feed on dung? Chickens, pigs, dogs, jackals, various others. A fool used to be a glutton here and did bad deeds here. After death is reborn in the company of those sentient beings who feed on dung. There's more. There are animals who are born and live and die in darkness. And what animals are born, live, and die in darkness? Moths, maggots, earthworms, and various others. A fool who used to be a glutton here and did bad deeds here, after death is reborn in the company of those sentient beings who are born, live, and die in darkness. There are animals who are born, live, and die in water. And what animals are born and live and die in water? Fish, turtles, crocodiles, and various others. A fool used to be a glutton here and did bad deeds here. After death is reborn in the company of those sentient beings who are born, live, and die in water. There are animals who are born, live, and die in filth. And what animals are born, live, and die in filth? Those animals that are born, live, and die in rotten fish, a rotting corpse, rotten porridge, or a sewer. A fool who used to be a glutton here and did bad deeds here, after death is reborn in the company of those sentient beings who are born, live, and die in filth. I could tell you many different things about the animal realm. So much so that it's not easy to completely describe the suffering in the animal realms. So I have a Hindi teacher. She's such a lovely person, but she's tired. She's tired of this life, and she just wants it to be over and move on to the next one. And she's always telling me that she wants to be born as a beautiful butterfly, because they're so majestic and they don't have to raise kids and stuff like that. I think her problems with her kids, but they're nice kids too. But and I'm always telling her, no, like, I want you to be born in the heavenly realm. I want you to be born in heaven. And then she made a good counter argument. She's like, but Bhanteji, the gods are always fighting and doing bad things. I was like, yeah, that's right. They're if you look at the suttas and if you look at Hindu stories, the gods are just as bad as the humans. And then I'm like, at least you'll be more comfortable when these things are happening, and you'll have a longer life and everything. So we always kind of have this back and forth that she wants to be a butterfly, but I want her to be reborn in the Devaloka so she can have a nice life. But then I also told her, when you're there, it's hard to get out of there. It's hard to get out of being in the animal realm because there's no opportunity to do good deeds. It's literally a dog eat dog world, right? Like, beings are eating each other to survive. They're just thinking about survival and procreation, much like humans, but we make it more elaborate. So the Buddha is going to talk more about this. Mendicant, suppose a person were to throw a yoke with a single hole in the ocean. The east winds wafts it west, and the west winds waft it east, and the north winds wafts it south, and the south winds wafts it north. And there was a one-eyed turtle who popped up once every 100 years. What do you think, mendicants? Would that one-eyed turtle still poke its neck through the hole in the yoke? No, sir. Only after a very long time, sir, if ever. That one-eyed turtle would poke its neck through the hole in that yoke sooner than a fool who has fallen into the underworld would be reborn as a human, I say. Why is that? Because in that place there is no principle or moral conduct, and no doing what is good and skillful. There they just prey on each other, preying on the weak, as I said earlier. So imagine the probability of you as an animal being reborn as a human is less than that one-eyed turtle that comes up every 100 years to poke its head through its neck through the yoke. It's virtually never, right? In the way we understand the world. So you don't want to go there because it's so difficult to get out of there. And suppose that fool, after a very long time, returned to the human realm. There they be reborn in a low-class family, a family of outcast hunters, bamboo gatherers, charioteers, or waste collectors. Such families are poor, with little to eat or drink, where life is tough and food and shelter are hard to find. And they'd be ugly, unsightly, deformed, chronically ill, one-eyed, crippled, lame, or half paralyzed. They don't get to have food, drink, clothes, in vehicles, garlands, perfumes, makeup, or bed, house, and lighting. And they do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of lost, a black place, or in the underworld hell. So even you did bad things, you're reborn in the animal realm, you come back, even then you're still not free. You come back in a difficult situation in life. And I'll address something that I'm pretty sure will come up in the questions, because it always does when I talk about this kind of thing. They're like, it seems so unfair. So you're telling me like babies and little kids who are born in impoverished places or with diseases, they must have done something bad in the past? Most likely, yes. Yes. But that doesn't mean we can't be compassionate towards them. I like to give an example. If you hear a loud crash outside and we all go running outside and we see there's a man there, right? Or a woman that was driving, and we peek in and we see a bunch of alcohol and we smell the alcohol over their body. We just don't go, oh, he's a drunk, just let him die. He did it to himself. Yeah, that person was drinking. They drove it. They're responsible for their actions. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to let them suffer and die. So even though people are born because of their karma in a very difficult situation, that doesn't mean that we dismiss them because of that. They deserve it because it's their karma. We still try to help them to the degree that we can. So I know this always comes up when we talk about this. So I just kind of want to be proactive before it even comes up in the comments, so I can explain more. Suppose a gambler on the first unlucky throw were to lose his wife, his child, or his property, and then get thrown into jail. But such an unlucky throw is trivial compared to unlucky throw whereby a fool, having done bad things by way of body, speech, and mind, when their body breaks up after death, is reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. This is the total fulfillment of a fool's level. There are these three characteristic signs and manifestations of an astute person or a wise person. So now we get to the good stuff, the stuff that we like. What three? An astute person thinks well, speaks well, and acts well. If an astute person didn't think well, speak well, and act well, then how would the astute know of them? This fellow is astute, a good person. But since an astute person does think well, speak well, and act well, then the astute do know of them. This fellow is astute, a good person. An astute person experiences three kinds of pleasure and happiness in the present life. Suppose an astute person is sitting in a council hall, a street, or a crossroad where people are discussing about what is proper and fitting. And suppose that astute person is someone who refrains from killing living beings, stealing, committing sexual misconduct, lying, alcoholic drinks that cause negligence. And then that astute person thinks, these people are discussing what is proper and fitting, and those things are found in me, and I am seen in them. This is the first kind of pleasure and happiness that an astute person experiences in this present life. So when people start talking about, those people who kill and do all these bad things, and you haven't done them, then you feel good about yourself, right? You're like, oh, what? I haven't done those things. Well, if they praise those people, even better, right? Oh, those people who don't kill, who don't steal, who don't lie, those are good people. And you're like, oh, that's me. And that's how you get that happiness right there. So, I think there's a problem with a lot of us that sometimes, like, when we get praised for doing good things, we have like this, how do I want to say it? Like this fake humbleness. And we try to like not accept the good praises that we get from doing things, right? Like someone will say, oh, it was nothing. And you kind of try to be all meek. But when someone criticizes you, you're willing to take it right away, right? Oh yeah, I'm nobody, I'm worthless. And like, so we have like a disproportionate, in my experience, I've noticed we have a disproportionate bias towards really taking in the negative things that people tell us and identifying with them. But when people comment us on the good things that we did, our good behavior, our good actions, then we try to kind of like dismiss it. Like it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. So many people are doing bad things all over the world. To do good thing is an act of rebellion. You can have some pride about that because it's true. You probably shouldn't go like make a poster of yourself and walk down the street with it and I don't kill living beings and I'm such a good person and I'm more righteous than everyone else. But if someone gives you a compliment, take it, rejoice in it, because if they were to criticize you, you would take it and you would beat yourself up over it, right? So at least give yourself a 1-to-1 ratio about it. Although psychology has found out that it takes like about like we have like a 5-to-1 ratio. So you need to you have to think 5 good things to overcome 1 bad thing, because that's how strong the bad things are, how strong we keep it. So even just the 1-for-1 wouldn't be enough. Further, an astute person sees that the kings have arrested a bandit, a criminal, and subject them to various punishments: whipping, caning, and clubbing, cutting off of hands or feet of both, cutting off of ears or nose of both, the porridge pot, the shell shave, the demon's mouth, the garland of fire, the burning hand, the grass blades, the bark dress, the antelope, the meat hooks, the coins, the caustic pickles, the twin bar, the straw mat, being split with hot oil, being fed to the dogs, being impaled alive, and being beheaded. Then that astute person thinks the kinds of deeds for which the king inflicts such punishment, those are not found in me, and I am not seen in them. This is the second kind of pleasure and happiness found in the astute person experiences in the present life. So if you're doing good things, if police pass by, like you don't care. They're just like regular people, and you don't worry about it. And when you see things on the news about they're looking for such a person or they're cracking down on this sort of crime, you're just like, whatever. It doesn't really bother you. I'm going to share something a little bit gross with you right now. So when I was in Kirkuk, Iraq in 2009, that base is where Saddam Hussein would train the national Olympic team. So there was a lot of sports facilities, which was nice for us. We got to use them. But there was also a torture chamber there, and we went inside of it, and there was actual meat hooks in there where they would hang the people and torture them and do all these very, very nasty things. I also have a cousin who in Mexico was tied to the back of a truck and dragged down the street, and all his flesh was ripped off his back. So these things still happen, still very real. And if just keep that in mind. Sometimes we're in our little safe bubbles of Whole Foods and Starbucks, but the world's not like that. The world is not Whole Foods and Starbucks. Furthermore, when an astute person is resting on a chair or a bed or on the ground, their past good deeds, good conduct of body, speech, and mind settle down upon them, rest down upon them, and lay down upon them. It is like the shadow of a great mountain peak in the evening as it settles down, rests down, and lays down on the earth. In the same way, when an astute person is sitting on a chair or a bed or on the ground, their past good deeds, good conduct of body, speech, and mind settle down upon them, rest down upon them, lay down upon them. Then that astute person thinks, well, I haven't done bad, violent, and depraved things, and I have done good and skillful deeds that keep me safe. When I pass away, I'll go to the place where people who've done such good things go, so they don't sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. This is the third kind of pleasure and happiness that an astute person experiences in this present life. So yeah, what do we say all the time when people do offerings or do something good, right? Rejoice. Rejoice in your good actions. And you can carry that with you every day, all the time. And that's what we try to do when the people passing away want to rejoice in their good actions. So a person who's doing good, they're free of worry. They're free of guilt. They're free of all these things. And that's actually one of the most, at the beginning of the path. I think I told you the other day, the sutta between Venerable Ananda and the Buddha, where the Buddha explained the purpose of everything. In the very beginning, Venerable Ananda tells the Buddha, what's the purpose of having good behavior? And it's to be free from regret, to be free from worry. If you have regret, it's very difficult to have, any sort of tranquility or joy of the mind and to practice meditation. But if you're doing good actions all the time, it's very easy to get to a state of calm. You can sit here, no worries, nothing, very Hakuna Matata. I have to use a lot of these story things with the kids in Dhamma school. I try to use a lot of Disney stuff. So when their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a good place, a heavenly realm. And if there's anything of which they might be rightly said that is utterly likable, desirable, and agreeable, it is of heaven, and that this should be said so much so that it's not easy to give a simile for how pleasurable heaven is. When he said this, one of the mendicants asked the Buddha, but sir, is it possible to give a simile? It is possible, said the Buddha. Suppose there was a king, a wheel-turning monarch who possessed 7 treasures and 4 blessings and experienced pleasure and happiness because of them. What 7? It's when one of the 15th day Sabbath, an anointed aristocratic king has bathed his head and gone upstairs in the royal long house to observe the Sabbath, and the heavenly wheel treasure appears to him with 1,000 spokes, with rim and hub, complete in every detail. Seeing this, the king thinks, I have heard that when the heavenly wheel treasure appears to the king in this way, he becomes a wheel-turning monarch. I am then a wheel-turning monarch. So we know about the wheel-turning monarch, right? The Bodhisattva had 2 choices, to become the wheel-turning monarch or to become the Sammasan Buddha. So here the wheel-turning monarch is given as the ideal of the highest humanly pleasure in this world, right? And then later the Buddha is going to go, but that doesn't even compare to what's in heaven, right? So you would think well, if I was like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or, Mark Zuckerberg, I'd have all this money and I'd be able to get what I want. But no person in this world has the amount of pleasure that one receives even in the lowest heavens. So I'll continue with some of these examples. It's very, very interesting what people, thought of to be the best. And this kind of plays into the whole story. We get to know more about the Chakravarti Raja. Then the anointed aristocratic king, taking a ceremonial vase in his left hand, besprinkled the wheel treasure with his right hand, saying, roll forth, a wheel treasure, triumph, O wheel treasure. Then the wheel treasure rolls towards the east, and the king follows it there together with his army of 4 divisions. In whatever place the wheel treasure stands still, there the king comes to stay together with his army, and any opposing rulers of the eastern quarter come to the wheel turning monarch and say, come, great king, welcome, great king. We are yours, great king. Instruct us. The wheel-turning monarch says, do not kill living creatures, do not steal, do not commit sexual misconduct, do not lie, do not drink alcohol, maintain the current level of taxation, and so opposing rulers of the eastern quarter become his vassals. Yeah, so then he goes through all the different directions with the same thing. And the interesting thing is that this king conquers through nonviolence, right? And then he tells people to be moral, and he doesn't increase taxes, which is a good thing. I wish we would do that in where I live, not increase taxes. I think most people in America can get behind this wheel-turning monarch just for that purpose, not to increase taxes. And also, like, I'm very into like sci-fi. So when I think of like the wheel, I think about it like as a spaceship or something like that, like coming down, and then it follows the king everywhere. I mean, I'm pretty sure like if some ruler showed up with like a huge, Independence Day starship over your country, you'd probably be like, okay, well, we're giving up. There's nothing much we can do. You're the new king here now. Independence Day was one of my favorite movies growing up. I was obsessed with it. So maybe that's why I think of like that. But in this version, there's no Will Smith. So we went through all the directions. Okay, and then the wheel treasure, having triumphed over this land surrounded by ocean, returns to the royal capital. There, it stands still at the gate of the royal compound as it's fixed to an axle illuminating the royal compound. Such is the wheel treasure that appears to the wheel-turning monarch. The next, the elephant treasure appears to the wheel-turning monarch. It was an all-white sky walker with psychic power, touching the ground in 7 places, a king of elephants named Sabbath. Seeing him, the king was impressed. This would truly be a fine elephant vehicle if he would submit to taming. Then the elephant treasure submits to taming as if it were, and then it talks about all the good qualities of this elephant and that they belong to the king. Next, the horse treasure appears to the wheel-turning monarch. Also, is a very, very beautiful horse. We'll continue on. The jewel treasure appeals to the wheel-turning monarch. It's a beryl gem that's naturally beautiful, 8-facet, will work, and the radiance of that jewel spreads all around for a league. Okay, just more nice, beautiful things, similes. The woman treasure appears to the wheel-turning monarch. She is attractive, good-looking, lovely, of surpassing beauty. She's neither too tall nor too short, neither too thin nor too fat, neither too dark nor too light. She outdoes human beauty without reaching divine beauty, and her touch is like a tuft of cotton wool or kapok. When it's cool, her limbs are warm. When it's warm, her limbs are cool. The fragrance of sandal floats from her body and stuff like this. So all these nice things. It might sound a little bit misogynistic, but if we're gonna be honest, everyone wishes they had like a movie star as a partner or someone very attractive. So let's be real, okay? Let's be honest with ourselves. You okay over there? It's my opportunity to take a drink. Plus, nobody likes like cold feet in bed, right? Like when your partner puts their cold feet in you in bed, you're like, get away from me. And in the summer, right? Like they're too hot, you want to push them away. But as a monastic, no problems. You don't got to see them drool on the pillow either. When you wake up at night, your partner's just drooling on the pillow. Not very attractive. The treasure, very beautiful place. Maybe something like we have in Calabasas, over there in California or something, or Bel Air. Nice places, Malibu. The counselor treasure appears to the wheel-turning monarch. He is astute, competent, intelligent, capable of getting the king to appoint who should be appointed, dismiss who should be dismissed, and retain who should be retained. He approaches the wheel-turning monarch and says, "Relax, sir, I shall issue instructions." Such is the counselor treasure that appears to the wheel-turning monarch. There are 7 treasures possessed by a wheel-turning monarch. So the king doesn't even have to do anything. He asks this guy to do all the work. Outsourcing, right? Even back then. And what are the 4 blessings? A wheel-turning monarch is attractive, good-looking, lovely, of surpassing beauty, or more than other people. This is the first blessing. So they've done so many times. They've done studies on like if there's a face-to-face interview, what's like one of the most significant things for that person to get hired? It's always attractiveness. Always. We don't like it. It doesn't seem fair. It's the way it is, you know? So sometimes we see these things and we have an aversion. Well, that doesn't sound fair. Life isn't fair. I'm sorry to tell you that, you know? And that's the way things are. People are delusional and they're always going to go with external beauty. Furthermore, he is long-lived, more so than other people. This is the second blessing. Furthermore, he is rarely ill or unwell, and his stomach digests well, being neither too hot nor too cold, more so than other people. This is the third blessing. Furthermore, a wheel-turning monarch is as dear and beloved to the Brahmins and householders as father is to his children, and the Brahmins and householders are dear to the wheel-turning monarch as his children are to his father. Once it so happened that a wheel-turning monarch went with his army of 4-fold division to visit a park. Then the Brahmins and householders went up to him and said, "Slow down, your majesty, so we may see you longer." And the king addressed the charioteer, "Drive slowly, charioteer, so I can see the Brahmins and householders longer." This is the fourth blessing. There are 4 blessings possessed by a wheel-turning monarch. What do you think, mendicants? Would a wheel-turning monarch who possessed these 7 treasures and 4 blessings experience pleasure and happiness because of them? Sir, a wheel-turning monarch who possessed even a single one of these treasures would experience pleasure and happiness because of that, let alone all 7 treasures and 4 blessings. Then the Buddha, picking up a stone the size of his palm, addressed the mendicants. What do you think, mendicants? Which is bigger, the stone in my palm that I've picked, or the Himalayas, the king of mountains? Sir, the stone that you picked up is tiny compared to the Himalayas. It doesn't count. It's not worth a fraction. There is no comparison. In the same way, compared to the happiness of heavens, the pleasure and happiness experienced by a wheel-turning monarch due to the 7 treasures and 4 blessings doesn't even count. It's not even a fraction. There's no comparison. And suppose that astute person, after a very long time, returned to the human realm, they'd be reborn in a well-to-do family or an aristocrat, Brahmin, or householder, rich, affluent, and wealthy, with lots of gold and silver, lots of property and assets, lots of money and grain, and they'd be attractive, good-looking, lovely, of surpassing beauty. They'd get to have food, drink, clothes, and vehicles, garlands, perfumes, and makeup, and a bad house and lift and lighting, and they would do good things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a good place, the heavenly world. Suppose a gambler on their first lucky throw was to win a big pile of money. But such a lucky throw is trivial compared to the lucky throw whereby an astute person, when their body breaks up after death, is reborn in a good place, a heavenly realm. This is the total fulfillment of an astute person's level. This is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said. Very good. All right. So we can move on to questions or, yeah.
Hannoyam namataya sadhukaram nadamase sadhu 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 anumodami. Thank you so much, Bhante, for that hilarious rendering of the Balapanditta Sutta. It's great. Also, much appreciation also from our friends online.
Oh.
And Jaden asks, I heard you say psychic power. Have you heard of that in real life or with monastics?
Well, about monastics, I can't tell. You know, I don't want to tell, but there are things that I cannot rationalize that I've seen. So, yeah.
All right. The rest of it is appreciative comments. So if you have any questions, you can type them in. And if there's something here in the live audience, the alive audience.
I have a question. Is there anything in the suttas that talk about how to? Because when I hear like being punished for crimes, like I think these days we always wonder too, like about like laws that punish us, whether they're just or unjust, and whether it's a just cause to resist those laws, and in a way, just deal with the punishments in like a form of civil disobedience. So, looking at like, are these laws even good and bad in themselves? Do the suttas instruct anything in that?
I mean, so the Buddha does advise the kings many times on how to properly rule the kingdom, so there is that. The Buddha doesn't say you have to be part of my group, but he goes, well, if you want to be a good, decent king, these are probably some things that you should take into consideration. A funny thing is that within the Sangha, when there's discipline, there's no real punishment, because if you do something like a parajika, on the moment that you did it, you expelled yourself, you're out, by yourself. And so yeah, within the Sangha, the person even has to admit it, right, Bhante? They have to admit it before you can do what you need to do. I don't have a good word for it. I think it's like Catholic penance or something. I don't know what we call it, when they have to like go to the back of the line and
Manatta.
Yeah, probation.
Probation?
Yeah.
Like a probation period. Yeah, but the Buddha doesn't really like get involved in, from what I've noticed, like, trying to set up laws for like externally, like stuff like that. He's mostly saying like, well, if you want to go towards Nibbana, if you want to go to heaven, if you want to live a good life, if you want to be a good person, these are the things that will help you kind of do it. But the Buddha does rebel many times, when his own family and kingdom were about to be destroyed, the Buddha protested, peaceful, silent protest. He sat in the middle of the road under the sun, and then the invading king with his army got off of his elephant, and he went to the Buddha and they said, Venerable sir, what are you doing in the middle of the road under the sun? Like, there's a tree, you should be in the shade. And then the Buddha said, there is no better shade than the shade of one's own family or clan. And then the king kind of knew, right? Like, the Buddha's trying to protect his kingdom of Kapilavatthu. And the Buddha stayed there and he protested for many days, silent protest, non-violent. But then the king found a way around, and he ended up killing everyone anyways. So if you read the suttas, you can find like these, examples of like the Buddha protesting, but it always has to come from like, compassion, loving kindness, peaceful, and usually like very silent.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And a few questions have popped up here. So Rob, your question is a little bit off topic, so if you can bring it back on Friday evening for monk chat at 7:30 p.m. New York City time, then well, Bhante will still be here, so perfect. You can ask. You can also ask directly for Bhante Sanathavihari to answer that. And Nancy asks, can you talk about ways you know that people in this life have transcended their personal hell through this practice? Maybe an anecdote from military experience as it relates to this teaching.
How they've transcended their personal
hell through this practice.
Personal hell, yeah, personal hell through this practice. Yeah, I say if you're a very resentful person, hateful person, or anything like that, so you're basically experiencing hell in this life. So in order to transcend that, I mean, usually there has to be some catalyst or something that's going to give you a paradigm shift. Something needs to happen. So, I mean, it's difficult for someone to be in that position and to notice by themselves that they're doing something wrong, because if that was the case, they would have noticed it a long time ago. So, it's kind of difficult. It's because when you get into like those dark places, your own personal hells, it's such a deep hole. It's so hard to get out of it. And that never really happened to me. I mean, I was very delusional before I was a monk, but I wasn't like in my own personal hell. I didn't really torment myself. I was more of like delusional greed type, going after pleasure and just being completely confused about what life's about. I did never really beat up myself, except when like that little Catholic voice would come in. But I would say, try to associate with the best people you can, and maybe one of those times there would be like a spark for you to change your life and to come out of that, and to notice, I don't have to be this way. Look, there's other people who are not like this. They're not in their own hells, and they've been able to live a good life. So just try to associate with people who are wise. That would be my suggestion.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And Andy says, do you have words for someone who thinks they did the right thing, being transparent about attraction, but now feels like a fool and is wallowing in their own version of hell?
Let it go. That's easy. Just watch Frozen, and then you just listen to the song. Oh, Bhante, you've been a monastic too long now. It's a kid's cartoon. It's a movie.
And Kumu says, Bhante, is there anything such as exhausting bad karma / good karma? Does bad karma not ripen if the conditions are not there and then get exhausted as well?
So of course, good karma and bad karma exhaust. That's what's called vipaka or pala. When it comes up, then it's done. But until it's done, then it's still there. And yes, the conditions need to be there in order for it to ripen. So I don't know if I had to say anything else about it.
Well, it's the last question, so it's up to you.
Oh. Yeah.
You have another question? Great.
When you mentioned in the beginning how converts like myself, especially coming from being a Catholic, we experience Buddhism and we're like, oh, this is a much nicer version of like the eternal fire of Catholic hell. And then hearing these things about Buddhist hell, I sometimes go online and I just like read up on it and things like that. And then we do hear about like different kind of explanations of the suttas. Like I've heard versions where people say these are mental states rather than actual hells. Or there's people who try to explain that the Buddha was speaking in the language of the people at the time. So like it might not be literal, it's just how they understood it at that time. So he had to speak in that way to communicate his higher ideas to them in language that they knew. So how do you explain those like interpretations? Like how should we process that?
I think they're like eel wigglers, trying to like find their way to get out of an uncomfortable situation. So I think, yes, you can be in your own personal hell. It's definitely a mental state. Anytime you're like completely, how can I say, like just crazy, you're so overcome with anger or sadness, you're experiencing your own hell. But you see in the suttas where many of the monks and the Buddha themselves says like, I recollect, I've seen for myself, I've been there, So when he's telling you that, you have to take him for his word, right? We just can't be picking and choosing. Well, when the Buddha said he's seen this, I like this one. But when he said he's seen this, he actually seen this. Well, I don't want that one because I don't like hell. So I think people are just like, they're just picking what they like. They're just like not being real with themselves. And they got to see, why do I have this aversion towards hell? Well, maybe because like I have bad behavior and I don't want to face the consequences. I want to find a way to get out of facing the consequences. And so yeah, those people just need to be honest with themselves, and I mean, take the Buddha's word for what it is, and not try to do all kinds of gymnastics and things to try to get out of it. That's what it says. If you don't like it, that's your problem.
May I add one thing to that?
Yes.
Also, as far as people who say the Buddha was just speaking the way people spoke at that time, that's also not true. At that time in India, there were some teachers who taught that there was no heaven and hell, who taught that there was no karma, who taught that there was no rebirth, no devas. And there were some who did teach these things. So the Buddha, by clearly stating there is karma, there is rebirth, there is heaven, there is hell, he was actually taking a very clear stance that was in opposition to many of the teachers at the time. So it's not accurate to say that the Buddha was just talking the way other people talked. There were many people who came and argued with the Buddha about exactly these points.
Bhante, you know what else I noticed? The people who are saying these kind of things are usually not Asian. Think about that out there.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, thank you. And thank you both, Venerables. And Anita says, Bhante, how would you say does meditation create a space to build on astuteness?
Oh, because you get to see the tendency of the mind. You get to see unskillful and skillful states arise in the mind. So through the practice of sati, the next step is dhamma vichaya, in which you see the wholesome and the unwholesome. So when we meditate, it's really an exercise in seeing, what is the kusala and the akusala, like in the Dvaita Vitaka Sutta, what we just covered earlier last week or earlier in the week. Venerable Aya Sudina, right? She covered that sutta about recognizing the unwholesome, the bodhisattva, seeing, like basically the factors from the Sammasankappa. So yeah, when we're in meditation, that's like one of my other critiques. And I think I talked about it the other day too, about like secular mindfulness, about non-judgmental. Like I get what they're saying, like don't beat yourself up, but you're not just like there and letting angry thoughts continue while they're there and let them exhaust. No, you have to recognize, no, this is an unwholesome thought. And then I need to replace it with a wholesome thought or a wholesome quality. As Ian was brought up yesterday about the sutta, the next sutta, the Vitaka Santana Sutta, which the first exercise is to replace the unwholesome state, the unwholesome thought with the wholesome thought. So yeah, so when we're meditating, we actually we're creating the conditions for us to practice like introspection, to be aware and to notice the inclination of the mind, whether it's wholesome or unwholesome, and then redirect it towards the wholesome.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And Naval says, in our world, do people born in countries who suffer due to terrorism or poverty indicate that must be because of their bad karma? And Jay then follows up to, like, do people in Somalia or some poor countries all have bad karma?
So everyone has mixed karma. I think that's the first thing that we need to understand. And then, yes, because they were born in these unfortunate situations like we saw here in the sutta, is because bad karma in the past. But that doesn't mean they're absolutely bad. They also have good karma because they were born as humans. So that's, and they've had good things. They might have had a very lovely mother that took care of them in that place. And, even being born here in the United States, like myself, I have good karma because now I'm a monk. But when I was a little kid, it wasn't like that. Like, my family and I were like basically on Skid Row. And we had to go to LA Mission and we had to eat at soup kitchens and we had to get like all this stuff. So it's always mixed, In the beginning, my life was like, I was experiencing a lot of my bad karma, but now I'm experiencing the good karma, So it's not a static thing. It's very mixed, and at different times, different karmas come up.
Yeah, I would also comment that, I mean, also being raised in corporate America is not necessarily good karma. Eating fake food and doing all those things, it's not necessarily a good thing. We think perhaps it is. Ekanayake says, hi Bhante, how a person or animal getting reborn in different realms depending their karma?
Well, how does it happen exactly? Or
I guess so, yeah. How does a person get reborn in different realms depending on their karma?
So I can't give a very super detailed explanation because I'm not a Sammasambuddha or an Arahant. I haven't seen all my past lives and stuff like that and see exactly how everything works out. But the general principle is unwholesome states lead to unwholesome or rebirths that have more suffering, and wholesome states lead to, better and nicer and more pleasurable births. So it's a general principle, just kind of like think about this in general and don't think about like try to figure out all the details, because the Buddha himself said that, a person would go mad or crazy trying to figure all this out.
Great. Thank you, Bhante. And Aaron says, I think that's my least favorite part of Buddhism, claiming people deserve their poor conditions.
We just got to work on that. If that's what the sutta say, then we got to see why we don't like it.
Also, the flip side is that we're also claiming people deserve their good conditions.
Bhante.
If somebody works really hard and saves up a lot of money and then they have a bunch of money in the bank, do we say like, oh, they don't deserve that? Or do we say, oh, they worked really hard to get that money? So nobody would say, oh, you're victim blaming because you say the person worked hard to make a bunch of money. You would say, oh, we're praising all the work they did.
Bhante.
In the same way, if somebody tortures themselves and then winds up having scars all over their body, well, they did it to themselves. It's not victim blaming. It's just pointing out that choices have consequences,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's good consequences, and sometimes not so good.
Mm-hmm. Bhante.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to highlight the mixed karma, which is the realm of the human experience, and that a lot of times what we think is good karma is not necessarily what we think it is, or bad karma, vice versa. We have a lot of delusional conditioning. So, for example, Buddhism is not in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
As in, it was not born here, and it's not like the prevalent religion. So when we see, it's a very good karma to be born in other places of the world, perhaps that don't have a GPD. Yeah, how do you call it?
Yeah.
GDP,
GDP,
that acronym that is that high, but actually it's has a very BDP Buddhist that is higher. And Kumu says, guess ultimately good and bad karma depend on one's mindset, as one can be born in a rich country and still suffer, or born in a poor country and not suffer.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're all on board with that. All right, and I think on that note, we can end the morning. This evening, we'll be talking about impermanence. There will be a panel of monastics, so you can ask different questions on the subject matter. I think it's impermanence anyway. If you have more questions on Kamma, that always seems to be a hot topic. You can bring them tomorrow for monk chat, and we'll try our best to answer them. And then tomorrow morning there will be another sutta study with, I believe, Bhante Sudaso. And next week you'll have hopefully some sutta studies and Dharma teachings from Bhante Sumita, our senior monk here at Empty Cloud, who's spending the Vasa here. And actually, Andre says there are very nice recordings of a course by Bhante Sujato about karma and rebirth, and also some interesting evidence of rebirth. Do you recommend it?
The one that I liked the most was Bhante Analayo's book that he did on rebirth. The first chapter talks about like what's in suttas, and the other ones is like all this personal accounts that people share. And there was also an American psychologist, right? Like 20 or 30 years ago from the South, from Southern University, who went all around the world and did a bunch of these studies. So those are like the two that I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with Bhante Sujato's work on this. But everything that he does is good, so I'll go with it.
It's a safe bet.
Yeah.
And Jaden says, it's really like planting seeds. We don't always know when it will come to fruition, but doing good deeds is like good soil to sprout the good seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we all can stand on that, behind that. All right, so we can end the morning with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. See you all in a few hours.